Previously on Practical Research 1. In the previous module, we discussed the introduction to research and we broke it down to the different types of research approaches. We talked about the ethical standards of research as well as the different qualitative research methods. From there, we zoomed in and focused on the different components of qualitative research, starting with the first chapter, which contains the research introduction. We then proceeded to looking into the different components of the first chapter, and we were also presented with samples from recently conducted researches. Now, as we move on to the second module, we will now talk about the second chapter of your qualitative research, which is the review of related literature. And with that, good day, students, and welcome to Practical Research 1, Lesson number 6, Creating a Literature Map, Part 1. So for this lesson, we have the following objectives. We aim to be able to reflect on the previous experiences, your experiences in terms of creating a literature review. Next, we will try and define a literature map and what it is all about. And finally, hopefully by the end of this lesson, you will now be able to construct a literature map of the study which you have selected and developed in your previous module. So, without much ado, let's get right to the lesson. And let's begin by reflecting. Okay? Here's a point to ponder on. Now, based on your experience, your previous experience in writing a research paper, how would you characterize the entire process of creating the literature review? Okay, let that simmer in. Now, for most of you, the literature review might have been one of the most stressful parts to write because the common conception would be it's way too long, there's way too many things that you need to put in that chapter, and honestly, many of you do not have an idea how to begin constructing the review of related literature. And for those of you who wrote your RRL, your review of related literature, for the first time, it might have been a difficult process for you. And for some, it might have been traumatic. So, I'll give you a statement and see if this sounds familiar. All you have to do is look for articles and other studies which support your study or explain the concepts in your research. Then you can place them in the RRL. That sounds a little bit familiar. You might have heard it before. I know I have heard that before. And what this is a sample statement from probably one of your previous teachers who might have explained the RRL this way. At some point, this is true. It will contain studies or articles and journals, researches which support your study. But if you wish to ensure the quality of the RRL, which we are going to do right now, there are certain preparations that must be made. And it is not simply looking for sources and then just putting them in chapter number 2. It's more than that. In fact, there's a whole process for you to undergo before the actual writing of the RRL. And one of these steps, the first step to writing your RRL, is the construction of your literature map. So let's go to objective number 2. What is a literature map? Let's try and define that concept. A literature map is a means of presenting the relationship of the different concepts found under your research scope. And this literature map is usually presented through the use of a chart or a diagram which contains arrows, shapes, lines, and these are used to show and illustrate the links and the relationships of the different concepts. And this is the definition given by Creswell in 2011. So let's dig deeper. Okay, so why do we do it? Why do we need to create a literature map? Well, for starters, a literature map allows the researchers to enhance their understanding of the research scope and topic. Okay? The research scope is something that the researchers must have a good grasp on, because it is only when you truly understand your research topic and the concepts under that research topic that you are able to expound on it better, that you are able to relate your study to whatever is happening in status quo. And that is very important, especially when you are trying to propose your research as you progress, as you go along, especially when you are done with chapter number 3. Second, it will also help the researchers to organize the themes and the concepts under the RRL. Now, I'll be explaining later on what happens when we don't create a literature map. And it will satisfy and it will support this second function, that there is a need to construct a literature map in order for you to organize the themes and present it in a way that is both easy to read and pleasing to the eyes. Lastly, your literature map, as previously stated, it creates a sense of connection between the research being done and other similar researches by way of your related literature. So, it gives you the opportunity to establish your study, your research, and create linkages from your research to other similar studies which have already been published or are currently being written. So that way, it helps you to place your research in a specific spot in that field of knowledge, that it is not outside that field of knowledge. Instead, it can contribute something to the existing body of knowledge. And that is very, very important, because without the connections to other studies, then your research is going to be shallow and poorly written. So the connections are important. And for us to establish that connection, we need a literature map. So here goes. How do you construct a literature map? We've been going on and on about its importance and its definition. Now it's time for us to construct a literature map. And I am going to teach you step by step how it is going to be constructed and developed. So let's start. The steps in constructing a literature map is a 3-step process. Okay? It is going to follow 3 important steps, and it begins with the formulation of the research title into a 3-step question. And all you need to do for this 3-step question is to fill in the blank. I am studying blank, your research topic, because I want to find out blank, what is your general research problem, in order to blank, fill in your research objective. Now, these things have already been identified in the previous chapter. So all you need to do is go back to chapter 1, look for these 3 things, and then fill them in. So that's all you need to do. Look for the research topic, the research problem, and then the research objective. Now, once you have done so, once you are done creating the 3-step question, you then proceed to bringing out the important elements of your research which will be included in the literature map. Now we begin to dissect the important elements of your research and use them as the foundations of your literature map and your review of related literature. Now, the third step is to expand those elements and to bring in information coming from related literature, coming from external sources, coming from other researches, which will help in deepening the understanding of those elements, and also, by virtue of the function of a literature map, create connections between your research and other studies, other bodies of knowledge, other researches, other journals, so on and so forth. Now, this three-step process in developing the literature map was conceived by Ramirez, okay, in 2009. Now, let's dig even deeper and look into the actual sample of the three-step process. So for step one, which is the formulation of the three-step question, this one is a sample. We'll be using the same study, the one we used in module number 1. So, I am studying blank is the research topic. And the research topic for module 1 was the student-centered approach as applied in teaching. So, we will fill that in. I am studying the student-centered approach in teaching because I want to find out. Then we fill in the research problem. And the research problem was whether the student-centered approach in teaching has an impact on the students' proficiency in the skills that they must acquire for their careers. So we fill that in. In order to help my readers understand and fill in the research objective. So, the research objective is to help the readers understand the possible relationship of the student-centered approach in teaching and skills development. So as you can see, everything's color-coded. The topic is in red, the research problem is in green, and the research objective is in light blue. So that's step 1. You have now formulated the three-step question. Now we proceed to step 2, which is the identification of the key concepts and the important elements under this three-step question, or even under your research topic. So step 2 is to bring out the elements, and from our literature map step 1, which was the three-step question, we brought out the following important elements. Now, please take note that these are for the purpose of giving you an example. There might be other key elements that we can identify. This slide contains 3 key elements which we have identified from the three-step question. For you, in your study, there might be more than 3 key concepts, so feel free to add more if necessary. Now, for the sample study, we have identified the following key elements. Number 1 is the student-centered teaching approach. Number 2 is developing skills in students. And number 3 is the relationship of the student-centered approach and skills development. So what will these important elements do? These key elements are actually instrumental in identifying the themes that you are going to include in your review of related literature. Sometimes, when we think of themes in a very spontaneous manner, without planning, without key concepts, the tendency is that our RRL is going to sound scattered, saturated. It is filled with unnecessary information, and probably information and statements that we will not be able to use in the later parts of your study. That is counterproductive, and that is a total waste of time. In most cases, people believe that the longer the RRL, the better. But I believe that there's a gray area in that statement. I believe that it does not matter whether the RRL is long or short, although there is a prescribed number of pages. Okay, each institution will require a certain number of pages that you must meet as a bare minimum for your RRL. But in my opinion, it is never the number of sources. It is not the number of pages that is going to make your RRL functional. It is going to be the quality of the information that you are going to place under the themes. Because you might have 50 pages worth of related literature, but only 10 pages are useful. So you wasted your time on 40 pages of related or unrelated literature. But when you have around 25 pages of good, solid, related literature, very related literature, very relevant literature, then those are 25 pages of rich information that you can use to support the results that you might have in the end or at the end of your study. So again, it does not matter if you double the required number of pages. You want to show off with 100 pages in your related literature. That's not what matters. What matters is that the content you place under or inside your related literature are indeed related literature and not just for showboating. Okay? So, again, they're very important. These elements are important in developing the themes. So, from the key elements, okay, once we have identified these key elements, we now proceed to the construction of the actual literature map, which is step 3, the expansion of the concepts through the use of lines, shapes, arrows, and concepts or sub-concepts that are found underneath those key elements. So, now that it is time to come up with your themes under the key terms, it is important to remember that themes are just chunks found under the key elements, which will help you to group together the related literature. Many times people will compose the review of related literature in a way that is more like a hodgepodge of different sources. There is no sense of coherence, there is no sense of direction, there is no sense of unity in the RRL, because all they did was, oh, this literature is important, I'll place it here. This literature is also important, so I'll place it here. I find a third piece of literature that is important, so I'll place this here. But no one, that researcher did not try and determine in what group that piece of information or literature is under. So, because we have the themes, now we are able to arrange and organize the information that you are going to place in your review of related literature. It's no longer going to be a mere combination of related sources, but this time it will be a presentation of related information in a way that is coherent, unified, and most of all, organized. So from the guidelines given earlier, constructing the literature map is done through the use of shapes, lines, and arrows to show the relationship. So since this chapter contains Related literature. Okay? Please remember to place information which are relevant to the research topic. Again, do not include information just for the purpose of showboating. Now, in my opinion, I think that the second chapter is of great importance. Actually, I feel like this one has a greater importance than chapter number 1. This is actually heavier because chapter 2 will be used as your support system for the discussion of the results which you will be gathering in the later chapters in your research. If you don't have a review of related literature that is built on solid foundations, if you have a mediocre RRL, then the discussion of the results will be lackluster. It will not be profound. It is not going to be comprehensive and extensive. Instead, you have wonderful results but mediocre discussions, which will, at the end of the day, it will affect the quality of your entire study. So, make sure to evaluate the sources properly and identify and reflect on the impact and the relevance of your sources to your actual study. Because the more relevant the source or the sources, the more comprehensive the discussion in time for the interpretation of the results. So, again, as we discussed, themes are used. And in reality, the discussion of the concepts in the review of related literature, as I said earlier, will be grouped into chunks with proper headings to direct the flow of the discussion in the RRL. This will help you as the researchers to organize your discussion, and this will help your readers to organize themselves in terms of their approach to understanding the different elements and concepts found in your research. So the purpose of the themes is merely for organization and clarity. Okay? How do we develop the themes? We will get to that in a while. So to present to you the third step, this is how it looks like. So we have the research topic up top, which is the student's perception on the student-centered approach for skills development, phenomenological study. Underneath that would be your key elements: student-centered teaching approach, developing skills in students, and the third one is the relationship in the role of student-centered approach in skills development. Now, underneath the three elements, you now find your themes. So, as I said earlier, I'll tell you how these themes were developed. As you can see, under student-centered teaching approach, you have three circles. One has characteristics of student-centered teaching. The other one has strengths of student-centered teaching. And the last circle has challenges of student-centered teaching. Now, these chunks, these themes, are the components of student-centered teaching approach that we want to discuss, because as researchers, we feel like this is an important these are important aspects found under the student-centered teaching approach. Now, you can't just immediately discuss the student-centered approach. You have to organize the information. And for us to organize the information, we group them into three different themes. The first piece of information that we are going to present to our readers would be the characteristics of student-centered teaching. So we will explain how does it work, what is it all about, who developed the student-centered teaching approach, so on and so forth. This serves as an introduction. Okay, so a sort of a warm-up, a history, a little backtracking. Okay, these are the roots of student-centered teaching, and this is how it works. Now, once you have done that, we can now proceed to the discussion of the second theme, which is the strengths of the student-centered teaching approach. So now that we have presented the history, the background, and the overview of the approach, we now go to the strengths. Now, as an approach, it is keen on doing this. And these are the good sides to a student-centered teaching approach. These are the benefits that you can get. Once you have done that, you now proceed to the other side, the challenges of student-centered teaching. You're not going to place all positive information. You are also going to place the other side of the coin, which are the not so wonderful information about student-centered teaching. You will also present the weaknesses. Okay, so as an approach, it may be strong in these aspects, but it also possesses the following limitations and challenges. And then you enumerate and discuss. So that is how we understand the role of a theme. It helps you to organize your information as you discuss the key elements. Now, is it always going to be 3? Yes, sir. Do we think of just 3 themes under the key elements? No. You can go as far as 5, probably. You can go as low as 1 or 2. As you can see, the developing skills in students element has 1 theme, which is the strategies in developing skills in students. Can we add more? Probably. Can we stick with just that? Sure. But the most important thing to remember is that whatever information you place under these themes, these are also the kinds of information that may help you to discuss the results once you have gathered your data in the later chapters of your study. Okay, so I have already discussed to you the implications and the role of these themes, which were found in the previous slide. Okay, so once you have done that, once we have gathered the themes, once we have identified those themes under the key elements, then the first half of your literature map is complete. We now have a general understanding and a general idea of the content that your RRL, your review of related literature, is going to contain because of the literature map. Okay? Because of this. Now we have an idea what to put in the RRL and where to put it. Okay? So we have achieved our objective, which is to organize the information. And now that your literature map has taken form, you will now be able to plan out your literature review in a more organized manner. Okay? Because we now have the map. And the only thing that we need to do would be to add the related literature under the themes found in your literature map. And that is what we will be discussing in our next video, which is part 2 of the creation of your literature map. And with that, I believe that ends our lesson for this day. And I hope that this video has been helpful in giving you an idea in terms of starting your second chapter, which is review of related literature. We will be talking about the specifics in the next video. So this has been Sir Dardar. Thank you very much for watching. Class dismissed.